Hello, good evening, everyone. I really appreciate you come again to make another presentation about our wonderful project I've been doing over the summer. So tonight we're going to another half section of a presentation, and there's slightly some changes. We're going to Team 15 topic or Team 15 first. 14, sorry. Open primary election, Rosalind, Emmeline, and Emily.
Hi, could someone else share the slides? Because I don't think I can share it from my phone very well.
So any of your team member can share that.
All right, let me see what I can figure out. Just give me a moment. Hmm. Uh, there we go. Okay, got it up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, so this is our presentation on open primary elections. So first we're going to talk about Maryland's current primary system. So currently in Maryland, it is one of only 17 states in America that has a closed primary system, or in Maryland's case, it's a partially closed primary system, meaning that Maryland parties are able to choose whether or not their primaries will be open to independent voters. However, in the past years, there's only been one instance where parties have opened up their primaries to independent voters, and that was the Republican Party, which permitted unaffiliated voters to cast ballots in the presidential primaries, and that took place in 2000. However, that change was a short-lived one, as the year after they decided to close the primaries again. So here's some reasons why people would want an open primary system in Maryland. Maryland's current primary system is now gaining high amounts of opposition, with a lawsuit being filed the week of May 30th, 2025, by 5 unaffiliated voters. This lawsuit declared that the restrictions on primary systems to be a violation to the state constitution. The argument for a Maryland open primary system is backed by our very own Constitution, as under Amendment 14, which gives all citizens the right to vote, which cannot be restricted by state, or Amendment 15, that prohibits restriction on voting by age or any other reason, and Amendment 26, which gives the right to vote to all U.S. citizens 18 or older. So thus meaning that Maryland, by restricting unaffiliated voters from voting, could be seen as a violation to our Constitution, and that was seen in the lawsuit that was filed. People have argued that additionally, people have argued that because primary elections is funded by every single taxpayer of Maryland voters, and 1/4 of these voters, however, aren't permitted to vote, but are still required to pay taxes, can be seen as unconstitutional and unjust at the same time. Additionally, Maryland's closed primary system is one to especially discriminate against young voters, as a greater portion of unaffiliated voters are young voters who are still trying to figure out on their political beliefs and are more inclined to vote unaffiliated or be independent voters, as they're not as aware of what they politically believe in. However, this system directly affects them and discriminates them.
So next is some pros and cons. So for the pros, according to the Bipartisan Policy Center, in 2022, states with open primaries experienced a higher voter turnout than states that had a closed primary. And states that adopt nonpartisan primaries see a 6.1 percentage point increase in primary election turnout. And all racial demographics had a higher voter turnout in more open systems. However, the increase in participation is larger among some communities of color, decreasing the turnout gap between white voters and voters of color. And then additionally, young voters are more likely to be independent than older voters, so this is leaving out a big percentage of people. And then for the
I couldn't hear you. So is that my problem?
No, I also can't hear you, Emmeline.
Oh,
Now it's good. We can hear you back.
you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the cons, open primaries can potentially lead to party raiding, where voters from one political party vote in another party's primary in an attempt to vote in the weaker candidate. However, this is extremely rare. For example, in Wisconsin, surveys from the 2016 and 2018 primaries showed that 2% of Democrats plan to vote in the Republican primary and 2% of Republicans plan to vote in the Democratic primary. So there is a chance that these crossover votes were in good faith and that even if they were an attempt at sabotage, the percentages canceled each other out. Furthermore, even in the circumstance of a closed primary, there is no way to fully ensure that crossover voting or sabotage doesn't happen. For example, a person who aligns with the Republican Party could change their party registration to Democratic, so they would still be able to vote in the Democratic primary.
All right, so now I'd like to talk about how open primaries function in other states. So first off, we've got Alaska. So Alaska's transition to a top four partisan primary system in 2022 produced notable results for candidate diversity. Women were also far more likely to seek office under the new system, as more women ran for statewide offices in 2022 than in the 5 previous election cycles combined. And so Alaska, along with California, reported an average increase in voter turnout of 3 percentage points. And so before we talk about what we plan on implementing for Maryland, I'd like to go over the different types of open primary systems. So, of course, there's our current closed primary system in which people from different parties can't vote for the other. But for open primaries with partisan registration, it means that voters have to record a party affiliation, even though this affiliation doesn't necessarily restrict their ability to vote in the primary election of a different party that they choose. While open primaries with nonpartisan registration is a system where voters can participate regardless of their party registration. So, how this works for independents is that in the case of an open primary with a partisan registration, they just wouldn't be able to vote for either Democrat or the Democrats or the Republicans open primaries. Or I'm sorry, I mean the candidate selection, but for the open primaries with nonpartisan registration, that independents can vote in that scenario. All right, and I guess I'll be going over the potential ways to execute an open primary system in Maryland. So, as I said earlier, voters who are registered as Democratic or Republican can only vote in their respective primary party's primary. So, for Maryland, we believe that it would be best if we believe that it would be best if independent or unaffiliated voters can choose which party's primary to vote in. So, and some other options that we can walk through is that open primary system with the partisan registration where unaffiliated voters have to declare a party affiliation for that election specifically. However, they are able to have a chance of which primary to vote for by using AI to for voting regulate by using AI systems for voting regulations that analyze voting data. And finally, there are individual candidate-based systems where everybody just receives the same ballot that lists all party candidates with their affiliation. So it'd be a very participatory system in which voters can then just vote for their preferred candidates regardless of affiliation.
And here we have the Maryland's public opinion on primary systems. So Open Primaries is an organization that advocates specifically for open primary elections and specifically targets states like Maryland that have closed primaries. And they have emphasized that closed primaries hamper our democracy. They exclude independent voters, the largest and fastest growing sector of the electorate. And additionally, other organizations in Maryland that support this cause is the League of Women Voters, Common Cause, and Let Us Vote MD. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you for the team, Roslyn, Emily, and Emily. And it's a great job. So I want to say you put everything together, actually have very complete overview of the issue we're facing. I look at the semi-closed or totally semi-open or open. It's kind of probably semi-open is the one easier to be accepted by the major parties. I think, especially I think about the way we can increase young voter participation dramatically. That will be definitely a great point to emphasize on that. And a great job. Thank you very much for this team. And I'm going to move to the next team. Do we have team 11 here?
Yeah, I think Shreya's not able to make it today. I'm not sure if Mark is coming. I just messaged him. I'm not sure if he's able to make it.
Let's, do you want to start yourself, Alison?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay, let me share my screen. Oh. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was a part of Team 11 along with Mark and Shreya, and our topic was deer overpopulation. So currently, Maryland's white-tailed deer population is estimated at around 230,000 to 250,000, which is a huge number and it's far above sustainable levels. Currently, Maryland has some regulations in place in order to manage this population, including controlled hunts, expanded hunting seasons, community-based plans, and non-lethal options like immunocontraception. However, these efforts are really complicated because there's a necessity to balance public sentiment with things like wildlife ethics and environmental health, especially in places that are very densely populated. Because deer have no natural predators and because there's a lot of urbanization, there's a lot of responsibility on policymakers and communities to pass effective solutions. And we think that addressing this crisis requires sustainable and long term policies that consider ecosystems, public safety, and conservation, as well as agricultural priorities. So, some incentives for this bill, one of them is environmental impact, because currently deer consume huge amounts of vegetation, which damages forests and biodiversity. Second is their agricultural impact. So, deer tend to consume farmers' crops, which has had a huge negative economic effect. A third concern is Lyme disease, because deer are a blood source for ticks, and they spread Lyme disease, which is a very serious health concern, especially in Maryland and areas around it. Another issue is wildlife vehicle collisions. Tens of thousands of car accidents involving deer happen annually in Maryland, and many of these result in very serious injuries or death. And one common problem that Maryland faces currently is that residents feed deers, and feeding deers increases and supports the deer population as it grows, which exacerbates all the issues mentioned above. So there's been relevant legislation. Currently, the state of Maryland has narrowed solutions for deer overpopulation to one main method, which is regulated deer hunting. So the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, or the DNR, is focusing on protecting white-tailed deer while also keeping their population controlled. And a direct quote from the DNR is that regulated deer hunting is the most effective tool for maintaining deer populations at appropriate levels. This is both in Maryland and also across North America. Past bills, SB 367 or HB 481, authorizes Maryland's deer management programs to continue. And the Maryland Farm Bureau states that these programs are central in addressing deer related problems as recognized by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And another important statistic is that Maryland farmers lose over $10 million annually to wildlife crop damage, and deer are responsible for more than 3/4 of these losses. Currently, Howard County's only measure is a 23-page comprehensive deer management plan. This also encourages residents to take personal action. So it suggests things like collecting and studying deer vehicle accident data, monitoring reflector effectiveness, and investigating preventive measures. However, these efforts have not significantly reduced public frustration, which is why we're proposing alternative proposals. In other states, there's also been deer management, so it varies by state depending on whether or not deer overpopulation is considered a significant issue. Illinois is facing similar challenges to Maryland with deer damaging crops. So the Republican state senator, Chapin Rose, highlighted that a farmer in one of their counties lost $45,000 from deer related crop damage. So they are advocating for SB 710, which is a bill in Illinois to make deer hunting regulations more flexible and allowing farmers and landlords to apply for and obtain hunting permits. Virginia has also implemented deer hunting regulations with varying bag limits, which is basically the number of deer a hunter can harvest per year, and it depends on location. Bridgeport, West Virginia is also enforcing penalties for feeding white-tailed deer. So the first offense would be $100 fine, the second is $150, and the third is $200. And as you see, our proposal is going to be modeled after this one. So for the abstract, white-tailed deer overpopulation in Maryland threatens ecological integrity, public safety, and economic stability. The consequences of this are higher rates of deer vehicle collisions, crop losses, reduced biodiversity, and the increased risk of Lyme disease. And we think that current management programs and legislative efforts leave significant gaps, especially in counties like Howard that lack enforceable regulations or incentive-based policies. So our proposal recommends a multi-pronged state-supported strategy that I will talk about in a bit. So moving on to our proposal, we have it divided on separate levels. The first one is county level ordinances. So in counties that have over 30 deer per square mile, we would require management plans and also conduct regular population assessments and publish public damage reports. These could be relating to crop loss, collisions, ecological impacts, etc. Second, state grants and farmer support. As I mentioned above, farmers and agriculture are one of the most kind of damaged by deer. So we think it's important to have grants for immunocontraception pilots in high opposition suburban zones. These would essentially prevent deer from reproducing, farmer subsidies for deer resistant fencing and crop protection, and community monitoring of deer numbers and collisions. We would also implement a feeding ban that would prohibit intentional deer feeding in high damage counties, and the penalties would be $100 for the first, $150 for the second, and $200 for subsequent ones, in addition to possible civil penalties. And exceptions would be if deer are a part of license in like rehab centers or for the purpose of approved research. A next step is public education and reporting. So we would partner with counties and NGOs for awareness campaigns on deer impacts, safe driving, and legal compliance, and create an online portal for reporting damages, collisions, and feeding violations. And for the impact evaluation, the DNR would have an annual report to the General Assembly, which tracks population trends, program participation, collision reduction rates, crop yield recovery, and public sentiment, so we can assess whether we need to move forward. And the implementation timeline, because this proposal has many parts to it, we thought it would be best to segment it over the course of 3 years. So the first would be counties adopting ordinances and grant applications open. The second, we would launch immunocontraception trials, enforce feeding bans. And lastly, we would evaluate results and consider statewide expansion. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. I think your team did much more than I asked. So that's great. Thank you very much. You covered much more than I expected. That's a great job. I think it's pretty comprehensive. I like the approach. It's all about both education and then the fines part, right? You want to really inform the residents, not feeding deer. And then I always select beer. So and then some other part of the work. Great job. I really appreciate that. And I just want to highlight the team. This topic actually comes a little later when we receive a constituent concern about their neighbors feeding deer, and then said, okay, maybe we should have some legislation to prevent that. And then this team takes the extra effort to work on this topic in a timely manner. Thank you very much, Alison. Okay, let's move to the next team, team 12. I think cell phone usage.
Yeah, that's me and Rohan and Grace.
Go ahead.
Uh, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Great. So Grace is not able to attend today, so it's just going to be me and Rohan. But this is our final presentation of HB 147, which is limiting cell phone usage in public schools. And we're just going to be presenting our comparative research with other legislation and providing some final recommendations.
Okay, so first for the synopsis and implementation. So the main point of passing this legislation is to improve the educational experience, mainly for elementary and middle school students in Maryland. So the main problems that most students face are disruptions from phones and other devices. But another pertinent problem is cyberbullying, as social media heightens a lot of bullying that could affect the emotional state of students. And this is mainly tailored toward younger students, so elementary, middle schoolers, because they lack the maturity to use devices properly, which many high schoolers likely have. But now for the implementation. So first we require each local board of education to adopt and publish a student technology use policy. And this is meant to limit the smartphone use of students strictly during instructional time periods, so when the teacher is teaching. Next is the policy should appear on the local board's website and in each school's student handbook so that it's publicly available and that there's no questions about it. Next, there should be some exceptions, especially in need for students who have health-related problems or if there's teacher discretion. And finally, um, boards with existing qualifying policies are exempt, but new policies should and can be created with existing resources. So now for some of the notable similar legislation across the United States. First, we have something like Maryland SB 112. So the point of this is that each county in Maryland must develop a policy preventing school cell phone use in class. And this exception only really applies if the teacher allows for phones for educational purposes. Next, we have Texas House Bill 1481. So this prohibits students from using personal communication wireless devices during instructional periods, and it's meant to minimize hindrances. Um, and we also have stuff like the Florida HB 379, which permitted the use of cell phones, except once again during instructional periods. And there was actually stored locations for students to keep their phones, and it's also aimed to improve the education environment. So I didn't want to go through every single one of these pieces of legislation because it's pretty repetitive, but the main points from this are um, prohibiting students from using their phones or other personal devices mainly will prevent like disruptions to the teaching environment. And that's also why the exceptions are if the teacher allows it.
Okay, so in Maryland, we have a Senate and a House. So HB 147 is currently going through the House, but right now there's also a Senate bill, which is SB 130, which also relates to cell phone use. Now, there's a lot of key differences and similarities between these two bills, so I think we'll just cover them here. So for SB 130, a lot of the differences are kind of in the administration. So the policies must be published in student handbooks, shared with staff, and the big thing is that they have to be reviewed every 2 years just to make sure they're staying up to date and relevant. And the Maryland State Department of Education will develop guidelines, practices, and policy options in with the consultation of stakeholders, which is parents and school administrators, district workers, and the Maryland State Department of Education will also be collecting data as it implements this program to make sure that it is effective and achieving its intended goal. And they will also be convening a statewide task force on student cell phone use to issue more recommendations by April 2025. So for some general recommendations for HB 147, so from one of our recommendations is to make sure that phones aren't being used at all during the instructional day, which includes during lunch and in the hallways. So this means that from first to final bell, K through 12 students in Maryland should not use phones except in special cases where the teacher does allow it. And this should actually say K through 8 students. Sorry about that. And then students with medical needs, of course, may keep their phones for treatment because it's something unavoidable and I think it's the right thing to do. And allowing cell phone use under teacher discretion will streamline the educational and teaching process because fully navigating around phones and only using maybe school provided Chromebooks and laptops may not be the best method for every teacher and lesson. So, and a lot of these recommendations are made because a full ban like the one made in Howard County could spark a lot of strong pushback from students and families who may feel really dissatisfied with the new policies. And so our approach balances our instructional focus as with limited student relaxation after class. So our recommendations in regards to aligning HB 147 more closely with Senate Bill 130 to pass both of them, hopefully, is to include only elementary and middle school students, which HB 147 already does, but Senate Bill 130 also includes high schoolers. And using keywords that Senate Bill 130 implements, such as cellular devices and personal electronic devices, could make the definition of what is and isn't allowed more clear. So for enforcement, Senate Bill 130 actually provides really good guidelines for having safe storage of the phones during the school day so that students aren't responsible for them, as well as disciplinary measures for students who are caught having their phones out. And so for transparency, we actually borrowed that from Senate. We actually want to borrow some of the amendments from Senate Bill 130, and we would like for HB 147 to include an amendment where it is reviewed every 2 years. And this will just help it stay up to date and maintain its relevance. And for state involvement, similar to SB 130, HB 147 should encourage discussion among students and teachers and other consultants to help create guidelines for the bill because I think it's very important to have input from the affected groups when we're making these policies. So as for the intended effects of HB 147, we hope to see, a lot of school districts that have implemented cell phone bans during the instructional day have seen a 15% increase in class participation and a 10% increase in standardized test scores. And these results were actually observed in Montgomery County in Maryland just a couple years back. So I think getting rid of phones has empirically shown evidence that it boosts students' participation in class. And it'll also help with student mental health because without phone bans, cyberbullying chances rise by 30% compared to school districts with phone bans. And 64% of students are pressured to respond to notifications during school time. So getting rid of a lot of the pressure and distraction that comes with cell phones is super important and a major part of our bill. And also, the Pew Research Center states that 72% of teachers report cell phones as a major issue in classrooms. And after cell phones are banned, students often appear more engaged in classroom activities. So really having the students be more active in class and not requiring more teacher intervention to have them do the work that they're assigned will raise teacher satisfaction overall and increase retention rates. Okay, I think that's it for our presentation. Thanks so much for listening. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Matt and Rohan. That's a great summary. Especially for the last page, if I look at the positive impact from limiting cell phone usage, that's tremendous. I think really appreciate you put all the numbers and the graphics together. Thank you very much. Great job. And next group, team 13. Let's see. Early voting date reduction, Maria. And Mina.
Lumina, are you able to share your screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Hey everyone. So our topic was focused on reduction on early voting days. Our team comprises of myself, Lumina, and Catherine. So the first part we wanted to explore was really the cost of early voting days, just to give us, a viewpoint of what, the current costs are and like why this may be a problem right now. So statewide so far, $25.6 million is put into the full year of 2024 for election operations. And this doesn't include early voting, so this is early voting and regular voting. We looked at two counties in Maryland. We looked at Prince George's County and Montgomery County just to see what their current costs are for early voting. For Prince George's County, saw that their costs are $1.3 million. That's an estimate right now, which is roughly 11% of the county election budget. And Montgomery County, it's roughly 1.1 million, like close to it as well. And this is based on either like election judge stipends, like overtime, also like transporting the actual ballots, printing ads, drop boxes. And we picked these two counties because no other counties have like separate early voting breakdowns. And so as you saw, there are several like cost drivers to this, and also you want to see the savings potential. So some cost drivers are, of course, the temporary staff that we need to have, the actual placement of the locations, over time. So Montgomery County we saw it was over $1 million roughly for early voting. And by applying this pattern to over 24 jurisdictions, there's roughly 45-60% of statewide early voting costs. And so, that's roughly 13 to 17 million of the total 27.8 million per year cost. And it's important to note this cost is shared between the state and the counties, so both have to, put in money into early voting days. And so by reducing days from 8 to 5 days, roughly the state can save 221.7 thousand a year, and counties can save 1.7 million a year starting in 2026. And so our main takeaway from this is that early voting is a high cost operation, and that by minimizing the amount of days that are used for this process, we could save millions and allocate resources to other election needs. The next part of our research really was about the amount of voters each day because we wanted to see if there were any, because there's an 8-day voting period, we want to see if there's any like peaks that happen or any like times where there's less voters. And there was. So basically, day 1 and 2 have a high output, basically roughly 150,000 voters. However, near the middle, like days 3, 4, and 5, it just tends to decrease, roughly 80,000 voters, but then back again up at day 7 and 8, it's back again to even 160,000. So there's clearly a trend where people would vote near the beginning and near the end of the voting period. So by making these days be like 5 or 6 instead of 8, we would have higher voter participation, all throughout the days. And also we wanted to see how this compares with other states, like what other states currently have for their early voting days. So like for example, Kentucky has like 3 days, Indiana has like 28. But based on our research, we saw that Maryland, it was currently working with 8, and we could reduce it to 5 or 6 and still properly provide, voting centers for people and allow them to vote.
So currently in the Senate, there's a similar bill, SB 18, sponsored by Senator Muse. So essentially, the bill titled Election Law Early Voting Number of Days aims to reduce the number of early voting days from 8 to 5. And so in terms of its progress, it's been referred to committee in the original chamber, which is the Education, Energy, and Environmental Chamber. So we also looked at the current support and oppositions to the bill. So in terms of support, number one, mail-in voting has become gradually popular. So there's a lot less of a reliance on in-person voting. Number 2 is that, as we mentioned before, early voting days are underutilized in the beginning and middle. And also, reducing the number of early voting days would decrease costs significantly. For opposition, number 1 is decreased access and flexibility to those who work, especially those who work earlier or later. And so our response to that is, while we can reduce the number of early voting days, we can also extend the opening times from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., which is the current opening times, to 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., which would allow more people who are busier later to come and vote. And also, we should make sure to include weekends in the voting days. The second main piece of opposition is that early voting days should be actually increased to increase access for people with disabilities. However, we believe a better way to increase access is to actually use the money we save from underutilized early voting days to invest in more accessible infrastructure and also expand on mail-in ballots. And the last piece is that it may prevent some people from voting. And however, we believe that there's better ways to increase voter engagement. So currently around 25% of Maryland voters do not participate in voting. And so the number of people who would be prevented from voting because of reducing early voting days is way less than the number of people who generally don't vote. So instead, if we reallocate the savings toward greater voter engagement efforts, we would be increasing overall voter turnout by a lot. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I really like the way you presented the response to opposition. That helped me understand a little bit as well. So thank you, Maria and Lumina. I think one question for Indiana, how can they do that for 28 days? Do they probably don't have a dedicated voting center? Otherwise, that's a huge cost, I'm thinking. Did you actually have a look on that?
I mainly looked at the comparison of other states, like how many days they spend, but I can definitely look in the future for more like really specifically what they do during the actual like 28-day period.
Yeah, that's a huge time, right? It's a huge cost and the burden for everyone who are operating the domain, because right now we even couldn't find enough election judges because it paid low and it doesn't really work well. So okay, it's great presentation, great summary, and I think that's well done. Thank you. And
Patton has
you raised your hand.
question. Patton has question on this, I guess.
Yeah, Patton, okay.
Just to like, cause like when we were voting last time when I was voting, in California where I live, we had like people at parks, so like you could like turn in your vote during parks during the appointed period, and then I think everyone like there is, I'm pretty sure they're volunteering, so that could like probably help with the cost a bit. Just a potential idea.
I see. Thank you, Peyton, for that insight. So let's move to the next one. And 15, increase community safety and reduce car theft using AI. I think Sean, Sophie, and Catherine.
Yeah, I'll share my screen right now. There's something wrong with my settings, I think, because it's not letting me share my my screen right now. And my group mates aren't here right now, so could we go to the next presentation while I figure this out?
Okay, sure. Sorry for that. And Team 16, background check for board members and commissioners and auction. Grace and then Michaela.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good timing because I just got out of the car. To double check, it's 3 minutes, correct?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay.
I think many of them actually exceed time.
Yeah.
I just make it easier.
Let's see. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so our topic is topic 16, which is background checks and transparency for state boards and commissions. I'm Akshan. I also worked with Grace and Michaela, but I'll be presenting on behalf of our group. So this is what we'll cover today. First, we'll cover exactly what the issue is and why it matters. Then we'll talk about how we solve this issue. Then we'll talk about why the solution matters, how we'll actually accomplish the solution, and then we'll move on to questions. So I chose a couple of key figures to point out, which illustrate the challenge we face. So right now we have over 6,000 volunteer members serving on boards and commissions in Maryland, and this is over 650 boards and commissions. And ultimately, this creates an environment where it's incredibly hard to keep every single volunteer member accountable. And especially considering that these volunteer members have a lot of power, it creates a huge issue. And this issue is illustrated by our state integrity grade, which is the D. I included the stat on the bottom. about how 1 in 3 Maryland residents believes corruption is a big problem in government. Because when we were conducting our feasibility analysis, we identified that there may be pushback from legislators themselves because obviously more background checks means that like more things get noticed and it could also be a threat to their careers. But this illustrates that it's not only an issue of safety, it's also an issue of what the constituents actually want. So this is a very feasible proposal that can win legislators' voters. So I think that's why the stat on the bottom is super important. And just to further illustrate, here are some recent corruption cases we've had. So Roy McGrath was the Maryland Environmental Service Executive Director who fraudulently obtained a six-figure sum. Catherine Pugh, while not a volunteer, the former Baltimore mayor, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Joel Bierman, just in 2024, the former University Park mayor, was charged with 22 counts of child abuse. So there's a lot of corruption in Maryland, and it's one thing to see it in numbers, but here are some examples that actually show why this issue matters and that there's real harm being made. So we've illustrated a very comprehensive problem, but let's find out how to solve this. So the first thing that we proposed is to have comprehensive background checks. So we decided to limit our background checks to criminal history and credit score verification for final nominees only. So for the Maryland volunteer process, it moves on to the final nominee, which has to be approved by the governor. By only checking background checks for this final nominees, we ensure that there isn't like excessive financial strain on the government. And Delegate Wu actually also made very apparent that having standardized contact information is very important for these committees and commissions because ultimately they're here to serve the constituent, but if the constituent can't contact them, that becomes super hard. So also having a standardized public access requirement for all commissioners is something we really want to push. And we also chose to focus on 39 high-risk commissions in fiscal and public safety areas. Obviously, having background checks for every single commission would be incredibly redundant because a lot of these commissions simply don't have a lot to do with something that would need background checks. So that's why we found 39 high-risk commissions, which are in a report to focus on. And then public biographies. So these promote transparent qualifications and affiliations. And Oregon had a similar model, and after they implemented a comprehensive vetting process, they saw corruption actually go down. And these are some expected benefits from this model. So the first is enhanced public trust. If the public believes that our commissioners and our people in power actually have to go through a process of background checks and vetting, then they'll obviously have more trust in the government. And that could also lead to them being more involved in the government, which is a double benefit. And there's also a deterrent effect. So if I know I want to be on a commission, but I also know that there's going to be a background check or something on my credit score, I'm more likely to act good before I actually go for my position because I know that that's coming. Whereas if there was nothing to track me, I would obviously do a lot more bad. So I think that deterrent effect is something that's really important. And it also promotes more informed citizens because we have public bios and things like that. It makes it a lot easier for citizens to make decisions that actually make sense, which is also very important in democracy. And there's also early detection. So rather than actually finding out that there's an issue after it happens, we're able to find out before it and then act on that. And improved accountability across the board as well. And the little thing in the bottom, a little bit about that. What I mean is that reactive punishment, after funds are embezzled or something bad happens, there has to be a lot of money spent trying to recoup those funds and a lot spent in the justice system trying to make them pay for those actions. Whereas if we just have a simple background check beforehand and we're able to deter those actions, that's going to be a lot cheaper. In our feasibility analysis, we identified that there may be some pushback from people who say that this might not be the most cost-effective solution. But ultimately, if we're able to prevent bad from happening in the future that costs a lot of money, then that is cost-effective. So again, this is the implementation strategy I talked a little bit about. We're focusing on 39 high sensitivity commissions. Some of them are listed below, as you can see, and we're only limiting to criminal background and credit score checks to focus on both fiscal safety and also public accountability when it comes to things like crime. And these only apply to final nominations pending governor's approval, as I explained before. Thank you. And any questions?
Thank you, Akshan and Michaela. You can close your screen. Yeah, I think your group really did a great job putting everything together. And based on my feedback, you narrow down. I think both the background check, right, and public contact and many other parts. I think it can be a very good legislation bill to really bring accountability to those important positions. And I really appreciate your work on this. I love the recommendations. Thank you very much. I kind of surprised by the number. 1/3 of Marylanders say there are corruptions the commission. Most commissioners actually don't get anything, right? They're free and volunteer position. But it's an honor as well to serve in those positions. So we want them hold them accountable at the same time. Right? So okay, but that state in integrity grade, that's D. I'm kind of surprised as well. That's really low. So I want to understand a little more as well on that. Okay, great job, team. So Michaela, do you have anything to add?
Not for this group, but I
Okay.
can share my screen for Sophie's group if one of them can do
I
so.
think not yet, right? So I'm going to group 17.
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, hello everybody. We are Team 17, and this is our report on auto insurance senior discounts. I am Emily Shi.
I'm Allison Liu.
And I'm Cynthia Sun.
All right, so just to give some context to the current problem that's facing Marylanders, or I mean the seniors in Maryland. So most seniors lack an active income because they've probably already retired at that point. But auto insurance costs more for seniors because they're physically more frail. So when they get into an accident, they're more likely to get really, really hurt. So the average cost of auto insurance for a 65-year-old is 1,762 per year. And we think that this is pretty unfair because seniors are generally safe drivers who follow rules and like they don't speed over the limit or anything, and they avoid risky behaviors like drinking while driving, like the younger folk like to do. So we think that it'll be more equitable for seniors if we had reduced costs for auto insurance for them, for at least the ones that drive safely. So that's what this proposed bill does. And I would like to preface this discussion by also saying that some Maryland companies already offer discounts for the completion of defensive driving classes like Geico, AARP, slash Hartford, and Farmers.
So some benefits of this bill is that the high cost of the auto insurance could either deter seniors from driving or impose a burden on those who continue driving. Because as mentioned previously, most of these people don't have like a steady income because they've already retired. And also for some seniors, driving is still a necessity at their age because they still have to like go outside and do errands. And driving cessation almost doubled the risk of depressive symptoms in older adults, according to the AAA Foundation. So if we're able to give these seniors freedom to the roads, it'll significantly improve their overall mood. And also over 13 years, it was also associated with 51% reduction in the size of social networks. So for some incentives for safer driving, this bill could motivate seniors to drive more safely, and a study by UPenn found that financial incentives actually encouraged drivers to drive safer. For example, many more people would refrain from texting while driving.
So next we're going to talk about evidence from other states. So currently 34 US states and Washington, D.C. all have a government-mandated auto insurance senior discount, and the vast majority of these have similar requirements and benefits. So if you look over at the table on the right, you can see that most of these states have a minimum age of 55. The typical discount amount is 5 to 15%, and there is a course required. This also includes all of the states surrounding Maryland and a majority of the states near it, so Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, New Jersey, and which begs the question of why Maryland doesn't have something like this. There's also been a passed bill, which was Bill HB 0974 in 2015, which was proposed, but it was withdrawn. And this bill would have allowed insurers to offer discounts to drivers over the age of 75 if they limited their driving to daylight hours. So this bill has slight differences to the one to our focused one. However, there are similar objectives of incentivizing safer practices and benefiting seniors. And this received an unfavorable report by the Economic Matters Committee. So we think this indicates that there could also be potential difficulties in passage of this bill. So now I'll talk a little bit about our proposal. Maryland Auto Insurance, or MAI, was designed for individuals who either had an insurance policy canceled or were denied coverage by two or more companies. It was created originally by the Maryland legislature, but it currently operates independently of them. So our report will propose an auto insurance discount within Maryland Auto Insurance, and we think that they should offer an auto insurance discount between 5 and 15% for safe drivers above the age of 55, and the renewal period should be 3 years. And as you can see, the numbers here are based on the ones that the vast majority of other states with a government mandated auto insurance discount currently have. And thank you to Delegate Wu and Ms. Jody for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. Delegate, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I would say thank you, Emily, Alison, and Cynthia for your comprehensive research. I kind of surprised 55 is now counted senior, so I don't know that. And I'm approaching that soon. So, but the data are really convincing, right? Many other states are doing this. I think we should do this as well. I can see it's so much advantage having this senior discount, and I really like the research you have. I'm going to back check that 2015 bill and see what happened. It's been more than 10 years, right? I think things are changing. People are probably more open to these new ideas and try to help our seniors. And great, thank you very much. And let's go to another group 17, now group 18.
Can you guys see it?
Peyton, Jaden, Shreya.
Is the screen share working? Hello?
We can
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so this is topic 18, Maryland Insurance Administration, and it's about monitoring denied claims and malpractice. And it's me, Jaden, and Shreya. Shreya couldn't make it today, so it'll just be me and Jaden. The background, the Appeals and Grievances Laws requires insurance companies to submit reports if there's claims of insurance denial. And then the same law also creates a system where disputes over insurance denial can be resolved fairly. And anyone with a dispute can file an appeal at the MIA, which is Maryland Insurance Administration.
All right, so the Maryland Insurance Code does provide some violations, such as sudden and unaccountable denials, a failure to provide explanations, and a failure to act in good faith, which is making decisions without honest investigation. So these are all forms of malpractice defined by the Maryland Insurance Code, in which companies can be fined up to $125,000 or receive a cease and desist letter if they find to violate some of these.
So potential legislation that can help with this issue, we have SB 893, and it investigates high-risk insurers every 3 years and low-risk insurers every 5 years. So these investigations will take a company and assess like how risky it is, like the company is, and it will also investigate the debt, claim practice, and reinsurance. So companies with lower risk will be reinvestigated slower, and higher risk companies would be investigated more often. We also have HB 1341. This proposed bill mandates insurers to create 24-hour call centers for immediate appeal processes. And this bill also pushes for transparency by requiring companies to inform members that there is an available appeal process if they have issues.
So we have a few suggestions. We think that enforcing appeal processes can be beneficial because you can't regulate the insurance policies of private insurance companies, but you can inform people that they can get a reassessment of their insurance denial. You could probably do this by mandating that insurance companies would notify denied cases that there is an appeal process. Delegate Wu also proposed in an email that you can investigate companies periodically, but this is very similar to one of the potential legislation on the previous slide. We also think that this could be beneficial, especially if an insurance company decides to make a sudden change in their insurance practice, which they may or may not realize will alter their insurance denial rates. Insurance companies already report denial rates, but this could be implemented by mandating that they report other important statistics. So you can investigate things like debt, employment, claim practice, and other factors and then have a talk with these companies if some of these are abnormally high or low. We also think that common investigations would also deter and prevent insurance companies from committing malpractice since they might not realize that some of their insurance practices could be classified as it under the Maryland Insurance Code. So we think that it would serve as early detection for malpractice.
And that's it.
Hey, thank you, Jaden and Peyton. And I want to highlight that Jaden actually won a competition over the weekend, right? Jaden, what's the competition?
It was the Howard County pitch competition for litter.
Yeah, and I was the judge. Okay, and how much money did you win?
It was $50.
Only 50. Okay, but it's still $50, right? Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So good job. I think that's a good suggestion. We definitely want to do something in terms of healthcare denial. The coverage denial has been a problem, and we want to figure out what's the best way to do it. We don't want to burden the insurance company too much. At the same time, we want to hold them accountable, especially for a lot of people when they deal with this denial of coverage. It always takes months, sometimes even years to address that. It's really depressing for a lot of families. Just get such a big number of bills, and it's kind of scary as well for some of them. Next one, and 19. Okay, that one we can skip, I think. And 20, align Emily environmental damage standing with federal standing. Group 20. And Selena, Sophie, and Allison. Not everyone here.
Yeah, I think we're all here. Selena, do you want to share your screen or should I do it?
I can share my screen.
Okay.
All right. You guys see it?
Your voice is really low, Selena.
I'm talking a little quietly, but
Speak a little louder. Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so we're group 20, and our topic was about aligning Maryland's environmental standing laws with federal standards.
So first, for an introduction in some context, Maryland faces a large number of environmental and climate concerns, and one of these is a significant air pollution problem. The term legal standing determines who is able to bring lawsuits to enforce environmental protection, and currently, federal standing laws allow any individual or organization who demonstrates injury in fact, causation, and readdressability to sue. However, in Maryland, individuals need to prove that they are uniquely harmed, which makes its laws really restrictive and one of the most restrictive out of all of the US states. So, some ongoing legal barriers currently is the unique harm requirement, which I briefly mentioned. Maryland requires plaintiffs to prove that they are uniquely affected, which excludes lawsuits that impact entire communities. For instance, if there was an air pollution problem that impacted an entire neighborhood, Maryland would say that individuals are not able to sue because they haven't proved that it uniquely affects them as an individual. Second is narrow causes of action. Maryland's Environment article lacks broad citizen suit provisions, which basically poses huge amounts of barriers to ordinary individuals who want to sue, so they're only able to bring lawsuits in very specific instances. Next is the taxpayer standing restriction. Maryland demands proof that plaintiffs are taxpayers, the official acted illegally, and that the lawsuit also benefits other taxpayers. And lastly are procedural hurdles. So there are a number of these. Some of them are pre-suit notice requirements, the state's exclusive enforcement rights, which means they're the only ones who can enforce it, and also potentially dismissal for duplicative lawsuits. And all of these make the process a lot longer and harder.
Legislative progress. So in 2024, Maryland passed the Clean
Toby,
Water
speak a
Act.
little louder.
Okay. It allows individuals, nonprofits, and associations to sue if they meet federal injury standards. This act expanded the scope to cover non-tidal wetlands and small streams. Before suing, there's a required 60-day notice to the MDE or the Maryland Department of Environment, as well as notices to the Attorney General, violators, and local government. Also, citizens can intervene in state-led cases or invite the state to join theirs. Some remedies include injunctions like warnings and civil penalties like fines. However, if Maryland is diligently enforcing the law, then private suits are blocked. The idea is to avoid duplicate legal actions when the state is already handling the problem. Also, this law has a very narrow focus and it doesn't cover things like air pollution or toxic waste. And now I'm going to talk about some environmental standings in other states. So in California, Massachusetts, New York, and Washington, there are broader standing laws as compared to Maryland. In California, any person can challenge environmental impacts, while in Washington, anyone showing a significant impact can sue. Furthermore, in Massachusetts, people and associations can sue for things like aesthetic, recreational, or conservation injuries, making it easier to bring forth cases. And finally, in New York lets anyone with an affected interest to participate in lawsuits, which increases public involvement in environmental decisions. As compared to Maryland, these states have more flexible standing laws that allow greater public involvement in environmental issues.
Next, for policy recommendations. The first step to aligning Maryland's environmental standing laws with federal standards would be to broaden standing scope. We would be doing this by expanding coverage to more environmental related harms. As the policy seen here, HB 1101 is only water related. This would cover air pollution, hazardous and toxic waste, as well as brownfield runoff and land degradation. The first step would be to eliminate the unique harm requirement. Basically, we would remove the special aggrievement rule that requires plaintiffs to show unique harm and adopt the federal injury in fact standard. Although the federal injury in fact standard still requires plaintiffs to show that they've been properly or kind of concretely harmed by these environmental sort of problems, they don't need the same sort of they're not as constricted as they don't need to prove that they themselves are uniquely affected by this harm. This would also amend the Maryland Common Law and Environmental Article to align with other modern environmental litigation standards that other states have. As for feasibility, we determined feasibility by how plausible it is to sort of create these changes. As for broadening standing scope, this has medium feasibility as there is strong stakeholder support, but it requires increased resources and may raise administrative costs. As for eliminating the unique harm requirement, this has high feasibility and is relatively simple to do as it aligns well with legal standards and existing reform momentum, as well as has manageable administrative impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, can you close the screen? Yeah, thank you. I think it's pretty comprehensive. I like the way you present, compare what you have, and some existing law has been covered. Make that suggestion, and that's great summary. I really love it. Thank you, Selena, Sophie, and Allison. Okay, so next, like 21, right? Group
Yeah, I can share
21.
my screen.
Yeah. Kaja, Karina, and Rohan.
Yeah. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are topic 21, periodic review of special education bus cameras. by Rohan, me, and Karina, and I don't think Karina is here today. So just a little bit about the background. So child safety and abuse is a major concern for all parents, and it's a larger concern for kids with special needs and their parents. So in Montgomery County, a bus driver was actually charged with second-degree rape for the sexual abuse of 4 special ed students. And in Howard County, a similar thing happened where a bus aide was charged with assault and fourth-degree sexual offense for hitting a nonverbal student and sexually assaulting another one. So, communication difficulties with special needs can create barriers in communication with like adults and come in conflict with um, legal consequences. So, regular review of evidence like recordings can help these officials protect students, and other states have done something similar to this. So, a couple of preventative measures. So, due to the past history of the exploitation of children with special needs, preventative measures should be taken in order to ensure their safety. So, our suggestion was to review special ed cameras every week. This would allow for routine viewing and identification of potentially suspicious behaviors and dangerous ones. So, currently, video surveillance is only able to be viewed right after the event which has occurred, which defeats the purpose of it being preventative. To combat the need for any extra costs, existing staff like school resource officers, if they're available, should be used. But if not, you can also use vice principals or principals of schools to view this footage. Um, Footage should only be viewed by the staff that I just mentioned and parents and guardians in order to value privacy. Alongside this, the state district should also submit quarterly reports regarding any past or current incidents to the Maryland Department of Education after collecting data from their public schools in order to provide quality service for students and to ensure their safety. A little bit about HB 694. So this bill was introduced on January 24, 2025, and it requires school systems to evaluate public schools for physical safety concerns with accessibilities for individuals with disabilities and document cases where inaccessibility for a student with disability became an issue that had the potential to hinder an emergency response. So that's where the whole bus camera situation comes in, because this can hinder the safety of a student. So in general, the bill is focused on improving safety for disabled or special needs students.
So now for some of the most important legislation that um is pertaining to this issue. So first is New York Senate Bill 8858. So this allows parents and guardians to review the school bus footage for special need kids. This is only if the student or parent or guardian reports an act of misconduct. And this must also occur under the supervision of the school principal or under another official. And the main goal of this legislation was to increase student safety, as we mentioned, but while also protecting their privacy, as the footage can only be viewed with a school official with them. Next, and the most pertinent to this issue, is New Jersey Assembly Bill 207, which is also nicknamed Emma's Law. So it requires that all special need schools buses to that have to be equipped with interior camera footage, and it also requires that there must be an installation of a GPS tracking system, and this will provide the location and speeds of all buses. And one more thing that is required is communication between the bus and officials. So this, all in all, will prevent special need kids from being taken advantage of, as there's lots of different um, verifications to make sure that this isn't happening. And the reason this is called Emma's Law is because of a previous incident of neglect towards a special need student who is Emma. And now finally for implications for our legislation. So first is enhanced student safety. So having the proactive reviews of school camera footage can prevent any misconduct towards these students, and especially because many of them can speak up for themselves. Next is accountability, and this will make sure that the staff are performing to the best of their quality and aren't doing any illicit behaviors towards these students. Next, and a very important implication is parent confidence. And many parents of special need kids are very nervous and have tensions when their kids are going on these buses because of this issue. But having this legislation may strengthen the trust the parents have with the school district and ease these tensions. Next are the privacy safeguards. So enforcing penalties for leaks and restricting access to footage to authorized staff will ensure transparency, while protecting the students' privacy of the school camera footage. And finally, there's efficiency. So, like Teju mentioned earlier, using current employees to examine the bus footage can increase the safety supervision without causing major costs for the schools. As a big reason why many schools might not want to implement this is because they need to hire more staff, which would just cost them more money. And yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan and Teja. I think you really did a great summary about this issue. So then come back to the last point you talk about as well is the resources to review them, right? So like every day you got 10 hours video or 8 hours video. How do you deal with that? I think that this definitely comes with some AI machine learning algorithm come to play, and they can skip most of the video, only pick up some videos for person to review, because it's not that anyone can review. That's the challenge, because a lot of legal protection and the privacy concern, and makes it really challenging. But I feel this is something we definitely need to do and protect those students who are not able to speak up or couldn't speak for them. So that's something I think we are really interested in. We're interested in. We'll talk about this legislation probably during for the next session. And thank you for that great summary. Do I miss any other groups?
Yeah, my group 19 hasn't gone yet.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Alex and Karina aren't here, but I can still present. Can you guys see it?
Not coming out yet.
Okay.
Now it's good.
Okay. So this is topic 19, Howard County budget timeline. So for the background, January to March 1st, the Spending Affordability Advisory Committee used fiscal data and historical revenue to create a report and develop a guideline for the next year's budget. And then December and March, the county executive holds public hearings where residents provide feedback on budget priorities. County agencies submit budget requests to the executive. In April, county executive presents executive proposed capital and operating budgets to the county council. Council reviews the budget and conducts public hearings again throughout the year, and then the budget passes on June 1st. And so the effects on the Howard County public school system are that it passes the operating budget on June 12th, which often results in positions being cut. And this affects teachers who may want to transfer. So teachers can request for a change in assignment to a different location through a voluntary transfer request form, but the deadline of this is April 15th. And teachers are considered for voluntary transfer after involuntary transfers have been sorted out before August 1st. Teachers who are affected by budget cuts, which are finalized in June, should know about them before deciding to apply for the voluntary transfers. So the timeline in other counties, in Montgomery County, the budget is finalized on June 1st. And in Montgomery County, they actually have two voluntary teacher transfer seasons. One is March 31st to April 25th, and the other is May 9th to July 20th, which is after the budget is finalized. In Prince George's County, the budget is finalized on May 29th, and they have one voluntary transfer deadline, which is March 17th. And so because the budget is finalized after the transfer deadline, many teachers have protested about this. In Baltimore County, budget is finalized on June 1st, and the transfer deadline is July 31st. So for recommendations and feasibility, state budget is finalized around the end of March, which could affect county funding, so the timeline can't be moved back too much. In Maryland, County is finalized around June 1st. Operating budget timeline is addressed in the Howard County Charter Amendment, which would be necessary to make permanent timeline change. Amendment proposal requires 2/3 agreement on council or by petition signed by 10,000 voters or 20% of registered voters. And amendment voting requires citizen vote. The second season for teacher transfers after the budget could allow teachers to be given more time and flexibility, similar to Montgomery County, and teacher transfers are addressed in the Howard County Policy 7090. These are the references we used, and thank you.
Delegate, you are muted.
Okay, thank you very much, Emily, to your team. I think this is a lot of information for your team, right? It's many of them have paid attention. It's a pretty complicated issue. Thank you very much. Really sort them out and put it really in a very clear, presentable way. And I really appreciate that. I think based on your recommendation, we definitely want to do something there and make sure our teachers have that freedom or flexibility when they want to do volunteer transfer. And we'll continue have discussion with our stakeholders on this issue. And it's a very important issue. Thank you very much. And any other team I forget to call, because I wrote it down.
Yeah, so I haven't gone yet. I was
Which team?
15.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sean, Sophie, Catherine. I think you're the only one here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Could you help me share the screen, Michaela?
Jody, do you have the PowerPoint slides you can share? Share your screen. Team 15. This is a last presentation, so I really appreciate everyone stay late. I know some of you started your school already, and so this is the final presentation. And
Oh, Sophie, do you have your teammates here besides you?
No,
no,
I sent
she's
it
the
to
only one.
Michaela so she could help me share it. So she's pulling it up right now.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Okay, so hello, I'm Sophie Sue, and I work with Sean and Catherine on the topic increase community safety and reduce car theft using AI. So I'm going to start with an overview of car theft in Maryland first. Vehicle thefts in the state have more than doubled from around 11,000 in 2019 to over 24,000 in 2023, and that is a dramatic increase in just 4 years. And this rise in thefts has serious consequences. It results in significant financial losses for both individuals and insurance companies, and it creates a reduced sense of safety in communities, especially in neighborhoods where the theft is more common. And when people feel unsafe, it erodes their trust in the local government and law enforcement. There are also economic impacts. Car insurance premiums often go up in high theft areas, and even property values can decline. Finally, with so many car thefts happening, police departments become more strained, making it hard to respond quickly or investigate other crimes. Now let's talk about license plate readers, or LPRs, and artificial intelligence technologies in these cases. So LPRs, also known as automatic license plate readers, are camera systems that scan and capture license plates. These scanned license plates then are compared to law enforcement databases, therefore identifying stolen vehicles or vehicles connected to crimes. Maryland law currently allows the use of ALPRs as long as certain safeguards are in place to protect privacy and ensure proper use. With recent advancements, AI has made these systems significantly more effective. Unlike traditional methods, AI can improve accuracy in challenging conditions like poor lighting, unusual angles, or even blurred plates. Furthermore, the AI can be trained specifically to recognize Maryland license plates, which helps reduce errors and increase reliability. These tools give law enforcement a more efficient and precise way to track stolen vehicles. Now I'll be talking about examples from other states. Many states currently use Flock Safety, which is a company that makes camera systems that scan license plates to identify stolen or wanted vehicles. There have been many positive results. For example, in California, Virginia, and Oklahoma, the cameras have been used to recover stolen cars. And in Wisconsin, the system played a key role in arresting a 17-year-old suspect who fled a stabbing scene. And finally, in Texas, one city saw a 13% drop in violent crime after flock cameras were installed. However, while the results are promising, we also have to address some concerns. First is privacy. Long-term tracking of drivers' movements could conflict with constitutional protections. This relates to the mosaic theory, which states that collecting many scans over time can reveal private patterns of behavior or movements. There are also accuracy issues with these technologies, and in fact, an investigation found that Flock misidentified license plate states about 10% of the time. These errors could lead to false alerts and have led to escalated police encounters. And finally, there is potential for abuse. Some officers have misused confidential data, so it's extremely important to have oversight.
Thank you, Sophie. Yeah, go ahead.
And based on our research, we're suggesting that Maryland builds on its existing ALPR framework and not start from scratch. This will be more cost effective than starting from scratch. Also, data use will be strictly limited to authorized law enforcement purposes. There will be no commercial use and no unauthorized sharing with out-of-state agencies. Next, we're putting strong privacy protections in place. First, any non-hit data, meaning that license plate scans that don't match a stolen or wanted vehicle, should be deleted within 21 days. This will ensure that innocent drivers' information isn't kept longer than necessary. Also, if law enforcement wants to search data that is older than 7 days, they would need to obtain a warrant. This helps balance investigative needs with privacy rights. And finally, there should be strict penalties for any misuse of data, such as suspension, termination of employment, or even criminal charges in serious cases. In addition to these penalties, the Maryland State Police should also conduct quarterly audits. These would track the number of license plate scans, the number of hits, recoveries, and how long the data is stored. Regular reviews can help catch any misuse, improve effectiveness, and maintain public trust. There would also be an independent evaluation by the VTPC, which is the Vehicle Theft Prevention Council, looking at car theft rates, case clearance rates, and public trust levels. This evaluation, along with the penalties and audits, will help ensure that the program is working as intended. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sophie. I really like the whole presentation, especially your proposal. I feel really comprehensive. Something I didn't think about before, that accountability and the other part is great. Thank you very much, and for your team, the hard work. And any other teams? Did I miss? I just make sure. Okay. So can you turn off the sharing? I think Michaela is sharing, right? I think this finished our presentation. I just want to take this opportunity for everyone staying here late. And really, it's my pleasure to be working with you over the summer. And I really see your passion and talent and the hard work, everything put together. You deliver something. I think you feel part of it. I feel really part of it. Some of your work will be very important. It will have a huge impact to the state of Maryland. I think we really appreciate your help for this summer. Thank you very much. And Jody, do you have anything to say?
Yes, I echo every single word Delegate Will said, and just a little small advice. Personally, I think I went over all the reports and presentation. I didn't notice any group like using surveys, like conduct surveys to collect first-hand information. If you can add that survey something like that in your future project or reports, your research and reports can be even more stronger. Yeah. And yeah, really congratulations and thank you so much. We really, Delegate Wu and all the office staffs really appreciate your efforts. We're so proud of you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks so much. Good night.
Thanks so much for working